The storm before the song. The highway into Freehold, New Jersey, was nearly empty that night. The rain didn't just fall, it slammed, each drop exploding against the windshield like tiny drum beats in a song no one wanted to hear. Wind pushed against the tour bus with enough force to make it sway, and every few miles, lightning lit the flat stretch of road in a blinding flash, only to surrender it back to darkness. Bruce Springsteen sat near the front, elbow propped against a window, watching the familiar outline of his hometown blur in the rain. He had played stadiums packed with 70,000 voices singing back every word. But tonight was different. This wasn't a stadium. This was a community hall barely big enough to hold a couple hundred folding chairs. And with the storm tearing up the sky, he wasn't sure if even a handful of them would be filled. The driver's voice broke through the hum of the wipers. "Boss, you sure you want to go through with this? Nobody's gonna blame you if we turn back." Bruce didn't answer right away. He rubbed the edge of a guitar pick between his fingers, a habit when he was thinking. "Nah," he said finally, his voice low but certain. "If there's a stage and power for the amps, we play, even if it's for one person. Hell, especially if it's for one person." When the bus pulled up to the hall, the parking lot looked abandoned. Water pooled in the cracked asphalt, reflecting the single flickering street lamp outside. A lone volunteer stood at the entrance, raincoat hood pulled tight, clipboard in hand. She gave a small wave as they stepped off the bus. Inside, the hall was warmer, smelling faintly of coffee and old wood. Folding chairs were neatly arranged in rows, but almost all of them sat empty. Somewhere backstage, the sound of someone tuning a guitar echoed in the quiet. Bruce walked out to the edge of the curtain. Peeking through a gap in the entire audience, there was one person, a man in a worn denim jacket, sitting dead center in the front row, his elbows resting on his knees. His hair was damp from the rain, and he looked like he wasn't sure whether he should be there at all. Most artists would have canceled on the spot, but Bruce Springsteen wasn't most artists. He stepped back from the curtain, a small grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "All right," he said to the band. "Let's give him the best damn show he's ever seen." What neither Bruce nor that lone audience member knew was that before the night was over, this rain-soaked hall in a half-empty town would become the setting for a story the man would tell for the rest of his life. A story about a night when music didn't just fill a room. It filled a person back up. The one-man crowd. The stage lights warmed Bruce's face as he stepped into view, but the heat was nothing compared to the rush that always came in those first few seconds. Usually, the sound of a crowd rising to its feet would be a wave he could surf on for 2 straight hours. But tonight, there was no wave, just one man in a denim jacket, sitting in the front row with the tentative stillness of someone who wasn't sure if he was supposed to clap. Bruce smiled as if the place were packed to the rafters. "Hey, brother," he called out, voice carrying easily across the empty rows. "Looks like you got yourself a private show tonight." The man chuckled under his breath, offering a small shrug. "Guess so." Bruce swung his guitar strap over his shoulder, a familiar weight settling against him. He strummed a single chord, rich, resonant, filling the hollow space between them. The soundboard hummed, and even in this quiet hall, it felt big enough to matter. The first song. He started with Thunder Road, not because it was his biggest hit, but because it was a song he always played when he wanted to close the distance between himself and whoever was listening. His voice rolled out warm and weathered, blending with the gentle rasp of his guitar. The man in the denim jacket leaned forward without realizing it. His hands, still clasped between his knees, loosened. Bruce noticed, not in a calculated way, but in the way a man notices when someone is being pulled toward the music, whether they mean to be or not. The between-song truths. When the last chord faded, Bruce didn't launch into the next number right away. Instead, he started talking, not the scripted tour banner he might use in an arena, but the kind of talking you do when you're just 2 guys in a room. "You know," he said, running a thumb along the guitar strings, "I grew up not far from here. Nights like this, rain pounding outside, sky threatening to crack open. They used to make me feel like the whole world was shrinking. like maybe I wasn't going to get out of my little corner of Jersey. He glanced toward the man. Ever feel like that? The man gave a small, knowing nod, more than I'd like to admit. Bruce grinned. Yeah, but then I learned something. Sometimes the world doesn't get bigger. You just learn to walk further in it, turning the empty into full. By the third song, something strange had happened. The space didn't feel empty anymore. The sound of Bruce's voice and guitar wrapped around the walls like they'd been waiting for this exact moment, this exact echo. The man in the front row began tapping his foot, then nodding along, then, by the time Born to Run hit the first chorus, actually singing under his breath. Bruce leaned into the mic with a mischievous smile. That's it. I hear you. Don't think I won't hand you the mic. The man laughed, shaking his head, but didn't stop singing. It was no longer a one-way performance. It was a conversation, a trade, stories for reactions, chords for quiet nods, lyrics for the faintest smiles that meant more than standing ovation ever could. And though the rest of the seat sat empty, the space between those two was as alive as any stadium Bruce had ever played. The song that wasn't on the set list. Bruce wiped the sweat from his brow with the sleeve of his denim shirt. 3 songs in, and it felt nothing like the usual early stretch of concert. There was no roaring crowd to pull him along, no walls of applause between numbers. But there was something else here, something sharper and more focused. He stepped back from the mic, looked down at the small scrap of paper taped to the stage, his set list of night, and then, without a word, reached down and peeled it off. He folded it once, tucked it into his back pocket, and looked straight at the man in the denim jacket. You like requests? Bruce asked, his voice carrying the kind of tone that made it sound less like a question and more like an invitation. The man shrugged, almost shyly. Guess I do. Bruce nodded toward him. What's your song? The request. The man hesitated, eyes lowering to floor. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. It's not one you probably play much. If I should fall behind. Bruce froze for half a second, his expression shifting almost imperceptibly. That song wasn't one he usually pulled out on nights like this. It was too quiet, too tender. But maybe that was exactly why it belonged here. You got it, he said softly, adjusting the guitar strap on his shoulder. The first chord. The first note rang out like the opening of a confession, gentle, deliberate, the kind of chord you didn't just hear, but felt in your chest. Bruce's voice followed, low and unhurried. We said we'd walk together. Come what may. The man's eyes lifted, and for the first time that night, Bruce saw something crack open there. Not just recognition of a song, but the weight of a memory it carried. The story between the lines. Bruce didn't stop after the first verse. He let the song stretch, breathing between lines, letting the silence be part of the music. He could feel the man's attention locked on him, not in a starstruck way, but in the way a drowning person might lock onto a voice calling them back to shore. Halfway through, Bruce's own voice thickened. He knew the song was about commitment, about holding on to whatever came, but tonight it felt different. It felt like he was singing not just to the man, but for him, and in that moment. Bruce realized he didn't know why this guy had come out in the middle of a storm to sit alone in a folding chair. But he knew enough to understand that whatever it was heavy. And maybe, just maybe, the right song could help carry some of that weight. The last line, when he reached the last line, I'll wait for you. Should I fall behind? Wait for me. Bruce let the chord ring out until it faded into the kind of silence you don't want to break. The man didn't clap right away. He just sat there, hands folded, head bowed slightly, as if letting the words settle somewhere deep. Then he looked up and said, simply, that was my wife's favorite song. Bruce nodded slowly, no grin this time, no casual showman's charm, just a quiet, understanding nod. Then tonight, he said, it's hers. The story comes out. The hall was so quiet after the song that the soft of the stage lights became the loudest sound in the room. Bruce adjusted the strap of his guitar, letting it rest against his hip as he crouched slightly at the edge of the stage, closing the physical distance between himself and the man in the denim jacket. There was no rush to speak. He'd learned over the years that silence, when you respected it, could draw out truths in a way questions never could. The man cleared his throat, eyes fixed on the empty chairs around them. "We used to come to your shows," he began slowly. "Not all the big ones. Mostly the smaller ones, the local stops. She liked being close enough to see her hands on the guitar." Bruce didn't move, didn't smile, just listened. The man's voice caught, and he took a deep breath before continuing. "She passed away last winter. Cancer. We fought it for 2 years. 2 years of hospitals and waiting rooms. And through all of it, that song, If I Should Fall Behind, it was a thing that kept us together. We said it was our promise. No matter what happened, we'd wait for each other." The empty seat. His gaze dropped to the floor. "When I heard you were playing here tonight, I thought maybe if I went, it'd feel like she was with me again, even just for a song. But then the storm hit, and I almost stayed home. Almost." He gave a faint, self-deprecating laugh. "Guess I figure if I was the only one here, I'd just hear you play a couple songs and head home. I didn't expect this." He gestured weakly at the space between them, as if it held more than the air and stage lights. Bruce's response. Bruce took a slow breath, looking down at the guitar as though it might hold the right words. "You know," he said finally, "my old man used to tell me something when I was a kid. That music's not about filling a room. It's about filling a person. I've played for tens of thousands, and I've played for 10. But sometimes the most important show is the one you give the person who needs it most." The man met his eyes for the first time that night. Bruce continued, his voice steady but softer now. "Tonight, that's you, and her, and if she loved that song, then she's here as much as either of us." The shift in the room. Something changed then. The air in the hall, heavy with rain and unspoken grief, seemed to lighten, not in a way that erased a man's loss. Nothing could. But in the way a tightly knotted rope finally loosens. Even if only a little, Bruce straightened up, walked back to the mic stand, and adjusted it. "Tell you what," he said with a half smile, "how about we play the rest of this set like she's in the front row too?" The man gave a small nod, his lips pressing together in a mix of gratitude and something almost like relief. Bruce counted the band, and the next song kicked off, not louder, but fuller. It was as if the hall itself understood that this was no longer a one-man audience. Tonight, the music was being played for two. The promise in the music. The first notes of the next song rose gently into the air, a slow build rather than an explosion. Bruce's fingers moved across the guitar strings with deliberate care, like he was turning each chord into something more than music, into a thread that might bridge two worlds. The man in the denim jacket leaned back slightly, his eyes fixed on Bruce, but not with a dazed awe of a fan meeting an idol. This was different. It was the kind of gaze you give someone who's holding something fragile for you, something they could break if they weren't careful. A set list rewritten in real time. The original set list, the one Bruce had stuffed into his back pocket, was gone in spirit. Every choice from this point on was about connection, not crowd-pleasing. My City of Ruins, a river, tougher than the rest. Songs that carried weight, songs that could hold both grief and hope in the same breath. With each tune, Bruce leaned into the storytelling between verses. He talked about his father's long silences, about old friends gone too soon, about the way certain nights on tour could feel both electric and unbearably lonely. He wasn't telling these stories to entertain. He was offering pieces of himself in exchange for the ones the man had shared. And the man was receiving them, quietly but fully, like someone refilling an empty well drop by drop. The ghost in the front row. By the fourth song, Bruce started glancing toward the empty chair beside the man. It wasn't deliberate at first, but once he noticed himself doing it, he leaned into it, letting his eyes rest there during certain lines, as if addressing someone who was sitting just out of sight. The man noticed. His lips curved into a bittersweet smile, a silent acknowledgement. I see what you're doing. And somehow, that empty chair no longer felt like a void. It felt occupied. The song that became a prayer. Midway through the set, Bruce stepped up to the mic and didn't play right away. He said his voice low, and even songs like Promises, you sing them enough times, you start to believe them. And when you sing them for someone else, you hope they start to believe too. He strummed the opening to Land of Hope and Dreams. The lyrics, usually an anthem for the open road, felt different here. Each line landed softer, more intimate, until it was less like a concert and more like a prayer, a wish for safe passage, for reunion, for love that refuses to quit. The man in the denim jacket closed his eyes, whether he was hearing Bruce or hearing his wife through the music. He couldn't tell. Maybe it was both. A promise kept. When the song ended, Bruce stepped back from the mic, letting the silence sit. He met the man's gaze, nodded once, and said, "That one's for the promise you made her, and for the promise I'm making you, that tonight you won't carry it alone." The man didn't trust his voice enough to respond, but his eyes said everything. The music swelled again, not as performance, but as an act of witness. 2 lives, 2 losses, and one night stitched together by chords, lyrics, and the unshakable belief that sometimes the smallest audience can hold the biggest meaning. The last encore. The set had been going for nearly 2 hours, but neither man was counting. Outside, the storm had softened into a steady drizzle, tapping against the hall's old windows. Inside, the music had turned the small space into something sacred. Part concert, part confession, part memorial. Bruce glanced at the clock near the exit door, then back at the man in the denim jacket. Normally, he'd wrap up with a barn burner, something to send the crowd home buzzing. But tonight wasn't about leaving someone buzzing. Tonight was about leaving them whole. The moment before the last song, he stepped up to the mic, speaking in that quiet register that made you lean in to hear. Some nights on stage, you feel like you're standing in front of a tidal wave. The crowd's energy hits you so hard, you can barely keep your footing. But other nights, like this, you're not fighting to stay on your feet. You're just trying to make sure the person in front of you knows you see them. He turned slightly toward the empty chair beside the man. "And I see both of you." The man's lips pressed together, his jaw working to keep emotion from spilling over. The last song, Bruce eased into jungling, not the roaring full band version that filled stadiums, but a stripped down, almost fragile rendition. Each note was deliberate, each pause heavy with meaning. The guitar solo, normally a cascade of energy, became something different here, a slow climb that carried both sorrow and light, as if the notes themselves were reaching for something beyond the hall's wooden walls. By the time he sang the last line, the man was leaning forward, elbows on his knees, eyes glistening. It didn't matter if those tears were for his wife, for the way of the year, or for the simple fact that someone had cared enough to sing just for him. The goodbye, that wasn't really goodbye. Bruce let the final chord fade into the quiet, then stepped away from the mic. He walked to the edge of the stage, hopped down, and crossed the short distance to front row. No handshake this time. He placed a hand on the man's shoulder, gave a firm squeeze, and said, "Safe travels, brother. Keep walking further." The man nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you for tonight, for everything." Bruce's smile was small but certain. "We'll meet again. Might not be on a stage, but we will." He turned, guitar still in hand, and walked out the side door into the cool, rain-washed night. The door swung shut behind him with a soft click. The man sat there for a long while after, the sound of that last chord still lingering in his head. And somewhere in the space beside him, the seat that stayed empty all night, he swore he could feel her there, smiling. The memory that lived on. Years had a strange way of folding in on themselves. Some moments blurred into a haze, their edges worn down by time. Others, a handful of rare, stubborn ones, stayed sharp, refusing to fade no matter how many seasons passed. For the man in the denim jacket, that storm-soaked night in the community hall was one of those moments. He could still hear the rain pounding the roof, still see the rows of empty chairs glowing under the dim stage lights, still feel the weight of Bruce Springsteen's hand on his shoulder. Life after the night. In the years that followed, life moved forward, as life always does. The grief over his wife's death never truly disappeared, but it changed shape. It stopped being an anchor that dragged him under and became something he carried in his pocket, always there, but no longer crushing him. Bruce's words that night, "Keep walking further," became a quiet mantra. On mornings when the bed felt too heavy, he'd say them out loud. On days when the world felt cold and empty, he'd put on "If I Should Fall Behind" or "Land of Hope and Dreams" and let the music remind him why he was still here. He started doing small things he thought she would have loved. Bringing fresh flowers to the park on her birthday, volunteering at a local shelter, fixing the squeaky door hinge in his neighbor's house without being asked. They were small gestures, but each felt like a continuation of the promise he had made, to keep walking and to carry her with him. The return to the bench. One autumn afternoon, nearly a decade after that night, he found himself driving through Freehold again. The air was crisp, the leaves burning gold and red along the roadside. Without quite deciding to, he turned down a familiar street and parked near the community hall. The place looked almost exactly the same cracked pavement, the same single street lamp leaning just slightly to the left. But inside, the stage was dark, the chairs stacked against the wall. The silence made the memory of that night feel even louder. He walked the front row and stood in the exact spot where he had sat all those years ago. He could almost hear the guitar again, could almost see Bruce glancing at the empty chair beside him as if it weren't empty at all. The letter that was never sent. When he got home that evening, he sat at his kitchen table and began to write. It wasn't meant for anyone in particular. Maybe for Bruce, maybe for himself. "You probably don't remember me," he began, "but one rainy night in a half-empty hall, you played a show for one. You didn't just sing songs. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost for good. I wanted you to know I kept walking, just like you said. And I'm not done yet." He never mailed it. Some things don't need to be sent to be true. Hearing the news, when word came years later that Bruce was ending his touring career, the man felt the news settle on him like the closing of a chapter. He didn't feel sadness so much as gratitude for the albums, the concerts, and especially for the night that had been just for him. He put on "If I Should Fall Behind" one more time and listened all the way through. When the last note faded, he whispered into the quiet, "Safe travels, brother." In the end, the memory of that night wasn't just about music. It was about connection. The kind that doesn't care about ticket sales or crowd size. The kind that can happen between two people on opposite sides of a small stage in the middle of a storm. And as long as he lived, the man knew one thing for certain. If someone asked him what kept him going after losing everything, he would tell them about the night Bruce Springsteen played for two people, one living, one gone, and made them both feel like the most important crowd in the world. The rain had eased by the time the last note faded, leaving only the hum of the amplifiers and the low crackle of the stage lights. The small hall smelled faintly of coffee and wet pavement, and the air still held the echo of something unrepeatable. Bruce stepped down from the stage slowly, the guitar strap sliding from his shoulder with the weight of 1,000 shows. But tonight, it wasn't exhaustion that slowed him. It was the gravity of what had just passed between two men who had never met before tonight and would probably never meet again. He stopped in front of a man in the denim jacket, the only audience member who had braved the storm. And for a long moment, they just looked at each other. No applause, no noise, just the understanding that sometimes the smallest stages hold the most important performances. Bruce reached out, resting his hand firmly on the man's shoulder, and the words came quiet but steady. "Safe travels, brother. Keep walking further." The man swallowed hard, trying to find something to say, but his voice was trapped somewhere behind the lump in his throat. Instead, he nodded once, his eyes shining with the kind of gratitude that doesn't need language. Bruce gave a small smile, one that held both weariness and warmth, and turned toward the door. His boots echoed against the wooden floor as he disappeared into the night, leaving the faint scent of rain and the lingering vibration of strings in the air. Years later, the man would remember every detail. The way the light had hit Bruce's face when he sang, the way the hall felt like a chapel, the way grief had loosened its grip on him for the first time in years. Whenever the world felt too heavy, he would play that same song, close his eyes, and be back in that little hall, with the rain outside and the music washing through him like a tide. It hadn't been a concert. It had been a lifeline, thrown across the silence and the years of loss. And even now, long after the amps had gone cold, the music still played, not through speakers, but in the space between memory and heart, where some songs never truly end.